I don't know if you know this, but we have an amazing team. I have an amazing team of world-class experts and coaches behind me. Now, like not right now, but behind what we're building at Healthpreneur. And these amazing experts are helping our clients on a daily basis, but you may not be privy to them. I'm gonna change that all today. I'm actually gonna share a never before released talk from Healthpreneur Live, where we brought up our team of panelists, our team of experts, some of them at least. And I think this will be a really useful talk for you to enjoy because number one, we're gonna dive into very tactical, nuanced details around messaging, around offers, around stuff we're seeing on a daily basis and what specifically our coaches see working with our clients and how they can use that intel to make improvements in their businesses. And again, you may not have access to this type of intel or this type of coaching. I wanna give you a taste of that right here. So sit tight, grab a pen and paper. I promise you, one thing in this video, at least one thing, is going to really be pertinent to your business. Whether it's how to get more leads, how to enroll more clients, whether it's how to deliver better results in the back end, there is something in what I'm about to share with you that can make a huge difference. So grab a pen and paper, sit tight, and let's dive in.
2 years ago, we did this really interesting thing up on stage, and we had a panel of experts. And then we had, I think, 3 people that were determined ahead of time come up on stage and kind of like Dragon's Den. Sorry, Dragon's Den is in Canada, Shark Tank is in the States. So kind of like Shark Tank or Dragon's Den, they'd come up on the stage and they pitched us their idea. Like, hey, what do you do, right? And then we had this really cool app that allowed everyone in the audience to vote on this sucks or this is awesome. And it was totally anonymous. But here's the powerful thing. On the screen, everyone could see the score. And every single one of them was horrible, okay? And the reason I share that with you is because a lot of times you think your stuff is so awesome, but most people don't, right? So Friday, I think I alluded to 2 things that have 2 big wins in my life. And I kind of forgot about saying what those were. So I'm gonna close the loop here. The first one was my book launch, The All Day Energy Diet, which hit number 2 on the New York Times list. And the second one was when we first launched our Perfect Client Pipeline a couple years ago. Those are the only 2 big wins I've had in my business, really. And the only reason for that is because I had a monstrous number of failures and learnings to understand how to craft a better offer. So what we're gonna do here is, we're not gonna do what I just mentioned a couple moments ago, although that was fun. What I think would be more valuable is we're gonna bring up some of our awesome coaches. We're gonna have a discussion of what we see makes a great offer, what makes an offer like, please change that. And we're gonna give you guys some really great insights from years and years of perspective when it comes to copy, messaging, marketing, what makes people do things. Would that be valuable for you guys? Let's bring up Cody Birch. Let's give him a round of applause, Cody Birch. So not only is Cody the man who builds your pipeline out in like 2 days, he takes all the tech off your shoulders, but he's one of the smartest dudes when it comes to marketing, funnels, messaging. He's really, really awesome. Who else do we have? The webinar wizards. I'm just gonna bring them up together. Melanie and Nicole, come on up. How many of you guys have been on Webinar Wednesdays? Really neat. I mean, do I have to really introduce them? Like, they're amazing, right? Absolutely amazing with messaging, copy. Who else we got? Kyle Gray, what's up, man? Bring him on up. So Kyle's one of our copy coaches, amazing with storytelling, amazing helping you identify your proprietary process, and also helping you guys with your Facebook ads. So he runs 2 calls within our weekly call schedule. And I know I'm missing someone. Bella. There she is. Bella! So Bella is our amazing client concierge, but she actually started off as a client. And here's how this all came full circle, is she was, as a client, responding to people's comments in our Facebook group, like, hey, why don't you try this headline? Or no, I think you should clear up your messaging to be like this. And I'm like, thank you, Bella. I don't have to answer it now. This is amazing. And that's kind of how it all started. And I mean, guys, like she is such an amazing contributor, not just in our Facebook group, but on our onboarding calls and everything. And not just like from a customer service perspective, but she actually gets this stuff. From a messaging standpoint, it's amazing. So I'm excited to have a chat with you guys. So let's talk about, as a whole, and I'll start off with you, Cody, as a whole, and we can just kind of go back and forth on this with the whole team. As a whole, let's talk about some of the mistakes that we see when it comes to people's offers. So does everyone know what an offer is? So just so everyone's on the same page, an offer essentially means anytime you ask someone to do anything, all right? So someone clicks on your Facebook ad, there is an inherent offer there. Click on this link because you'll discover something. There's a promise, right? So the offer is very similar to the promise. Your webinar registration page or your landing page is gonna have some type of promise, like here's a headline, here's what you're gonna discover on the webinar. Your webinar is gonna have a promise to something that they're gonna get out of a call that you're gonna have with them, and then your ultimate program, the offer of that is, hey, here's what you get as a result of working with me, right? So there's a lot of promises throughout this process, and that's kind of what we're bringing all together here. Does that make sense? So Cody, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see when it comes to offers and promises and stuff like that?
Yeah, so number one, acknowledging that we make offers all the time to everybody all the time. Today you made me an offer, said, hey, come up on stage, or give you a microphone and talk. Like we just make offers all the time. So I think that I always think in stories. And so I remember my wife, who's in the back of the room holding the marshmallow baby, a few years ago, she said, hey, we're doing this thing where all these couples are getting together and we're going to have a cooking contest. It's going to take about 6 hours, and we're going to go to the store and we're going to cook. And it's on Saturday when you typically watch college football. And instead of that, we're going to do this other thing. And I thought, I don't really like that offer. That's not a great offer. Not what I wanted to do. And I took the offer because I've been married for long enough to know that you take those kinds of offers. And on the other hand, my parents just moved to Colorado Springs where we live, and I told my dad the new John Wick movie when it came out. I said, Dad, do you want to go to the movie? I'll come pick you up. I'm buying, and it's on me, and I'll be by in 10 minutes. And he's like, well, yeah, of course, like I'm in. That's a great offer. And so my dad took that offer. So not that I make great offers and she makes bad ones. That's not the point at all. But it's acknowledging like the context of where they are at and what they're going through and what they want to do and what pain they're feeling and what your solution provides, and being able to communicate that in a way that they're like, yes, of course, like I'm in, like I'll click the button, I'll watch your 90-minute training, like I'll book a call, like the pain is so intense that like I'll take it, whatever it is, I want it so bad. And so that acknowledgement, I think, of context, long way of saying like knowing where they're at in their life and what their day is like and what they're experiencing makes your offer irresistible.
Cool. Can I interject for 1 second? I'm going to ask you guys a question, and I want you guys to let me know if you understand this. So this is the name of somebody's process. Like, hey, if you work with me, I'm going to show you this thing, right? This proprietary process. And the name of it is the divorced father to alienated child reunification focuser. So I'm not the only one, right? Okay, so this is an example of what happens, right, when we're working with our clients. But here's the thing, is that part of our job with you guys is to help you understand that that is unacceptable, right? It doesn't matter how cool you think it is. That is a terrible, terrible name. And that's we're kind of going off a little bit of a path here with respect to offers. But the thing is, if nobody understands that, nobody is going to take action on it, because if it confuses your brain can't make a decision because it goes into fight or flight. Okay, Daniel Kahneman, who won a Nobel Prize for behavioral psychology or behavioral economics, one of the first to show that like what happens up here impacts our decisions. So that's just an example of a massively unclear type of offer, right? Nicole, webinars. What do you see when people are coming to you with, hey, on this webinar, you're going to discover, here's my promise. Like, here's the thing you're going to discover. Like, what's the thing that you see a lot of that you're like, man, we got to clean this up a little?
Okay, so a lot of times it's too many ideas, too many different promises. They don't sound believable. They're not really related. So all of a sudden it's like it's the kitchen sink approach, and that doesn't work well. The other thing is, I think I've seen this a lot more recently, is people promising you'll understand why you have the problem you have. Nobody cares about that. They want the solution. So that's what you need to promise them, is how they're going to benefit by watching the webinar. And those are two of the big ones I've been seeing recently.
Awesome. Melanie, do you want to add anything to that from the webinar promise perspective?
Yes, I would love for people to stop titling their slide what you are going to learn. Nobody enjoyed college the first time. Nobody wants to learn. We all still have trauma from our previous report cards. Again, someone, like, why would I sit in your webinar so you can judge me? I don't even know you. I can't take it. Anyways, but I love to discover stuff. I like to think I invented things. I like to think I was the first one to think of them. And I'm not the only one who feels that way. So if you have something that I get to discover, you're going to craft your webinar. So like, it's totally diabolical, right? It's 4x6 cards. We carefully map out the ideas. We make sense. And then we flip them upside down and we organize them according to the template. So it comes off like, hey, baby, you're going to discover this thing and it's going to be like the only one that ever thought of it. And then you click the button.
What sounds like more work, discover or learn? Do people like doing work? Right. So, and that goes back down to like, again, we can micro that as an offer to some degree. Like, hey, you're going to learn. Great. Thanks a lot. Kyle, what about you? What are some things you obviously deal a lot with the landing pages? So landing page is the page people land on to register for the webinar or opt in for anything, right? What do you see in terms of like headlines, promises?
So kind of in line with that, I feel like we're a lot of you in here are extremely intelligent. You've got so much to offer and so much to share. And there's this need to or there's this feeling that some people have to communicate as much as like they need to know all of my expertise. They need to know every single acronym and what it means at the back of my name and everything there. But one of the things that I'd really like to encourage just in this process, like the goal of your ad, the only thing your ad needs to do is to get them to click and then go to the webinar page. And the only thing that the webinar page needs to do is get them to click again and fill in a little bit more information. We don't need to sell everything to them right away. And I think that takes a lot of pressure off of us. We just need to give them just enough. It's not about showing them, here's everything you need to do to get where you want to go. I just want to help you believe that it's possible and maybe show you a slightly different way to look at things just get them to open up their minds a little bit and open up their beliefs. And so once you start seeing your ad from that purpose, and once you start seeing your webinar landing page as that purpose, I think it allows you to be a little more creative, and it takes a lot more pressure off of, I've got to communicate all these things, because if they don't know that we're going to optimize their adrenals in this, they're definitely not going to sign up.
Yeah, that's really good. Let me ask you guys a question. It's two restaurants, okay? So restaurant A has been in town for a while. It's the best Mexican, Italian, Japanese, Canadian, French, and Moroccan cuisine, okay? That's option A. Option 2 is Italian. Which one do you want to go to? Why? Yeah. So when it comes to offers, and we've alluded to this here, like when you promise too many things, it dilutes the whole message, right? It's just, you have to focus on one thing. And I think Kyle alluded to this. We want to, we're so smart. We have so much to share. We're like, take it all, right? Here's everything you're going to learn. It's too much for people, okay? So one thing, keep it clear, keep it succinct. Bella, inside the Facebook group, you're engaged with, all this type of discussion. What are some of the things that, again, anything that hasn't been mentioned that you see come up over and over again?
I think it's just being really clear about aligning your passion and your gifts with other people's problems. Oftentimes there's a little bit of a disconnect because a lot of practitioners and health coaches are like, well, I just want to keep people healthy and I want to make them healthier. And we've talked a lot about how prevention doesn't really sell. When you're going into a cold market specifically, it's like, yeah, you feel good, well, you feel better. People are like, there's a lot of ways that you could do that. Go to a juice bar and feel better. It's not a premium price problem because it's not a problem. So the problem has to be really clear. And then the reason why you do it has to align too. If you just do something because it's like, oh, that's a big problem and spend money about it, then you're not motivated by your passion. And wherever your passion follows, and think about your people. And I often try to encourage people to think about the next step too. It's okay, well, if you solve this problem for them, then what? What's that retention look like? And how can you serve them deeper? What would your mastermind be like? What's that group of people that you want to surround yourself with, that you guys can have this mutually beneficial relationship that doesn't have to end, right? And when you start seeing that bigger picture, sometimes that's where it's like, oh, right, well, it's this thing. And oftentimes it's related to your story, Oftentimes people are their own perfect client.
Yeah, most of the time. How many of you guys are your perfect client 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago? Yeah, we're all looking to help ourselves or someone we love in the past, right? More or less. Yeah, that's great. Just out of curiosity, Melanie, Nicole, you guys have written a lot of sales copy over the years. How many best-selling products, offers have been prevention related?
I'm going to go with a 0.
Yeah, I can't think of any.
Yeah, so
Okay, maybe if you have a hot audience and you've had them for years and you have a huge marketplace and you already sold them on a thing that was a problem that you solved for them, maybe you could then say, now that I've solved problem A for you, would you like to continue to feel awesome? So maybe as an upsell, but no, as your initial offer, never.
So we're in Scottsdale. I think they get 300 days of sun a year. If you set up an umbrella business, is that a good offer? But it might rain, and when it does, you'll be ready. Like, great. Well, I've personally never seen rain here until the other day. So this is something I get my kids to think about. I'm like, hey guys, like, what's the problem your fellow students are dealing with that you could solve? And it has to do with like Pokemon or something like that. But I'm like think of something people really want, not just like, I think they might have a headache in the future, so here's this plan to prevent headaches. Doesn't happen, guys. And here's the challenge: is we all know we want prevention, right? We all want prevention because treatments, it's obviously retroactive, but the reality is the human condition only acts after the fact, right? I had a heart attack. Now I'm going to get active. Now I'm going to get healthy, right? Let's talk about like certain conditions. When we talk about like, heart disease, diabetes, different things like that. What are some things that people need to keep in mind? Like for instance, if we look at, I help pre-diabetics versus type 2 diabetics, stuff like that. What are things that we need to think of when we're approaching a marketplace with an offer? Like, do we want to be going after people with pre-diabetes, or it's someone who already has diabetes? Like, can you talk to us a little bit about that?
I think diabetes is going to be a stronger market because, again, they've got it now. The other good thing is if it's people who been told they have to start taking, metformin or something. So they're really at the point where their doctor is prescribing action for them, as opposed to something like, you gotta, just watch your blood sugar. And, people don't really respond to that again because it's not a bleeding problem.
I'll add a little bit to that. I often ask what changed. So many of these problems are chronic lifestyle diseases. And so the only reason they would contact you, whether it's prediabetes or diabetes, is if something changed. So I always ask, what's the day in the life? Did they just come back from the doctor this afternoon and he said, if you don't drop the 20 pounds, I'm going to have to put you on the meds? Did the wife say, I can't live like this anymore? Something happened, and now they're alone. Now they're on their phone. Now they're looking at Facebook, and they will click because what changed, right? And it's everybody has that moment. You all have that moment in your life where like, oh no, yesterday, whatever, I'll live with my diabetes. Today, now it's an emergency. So if you have that in mind when you're writing your webinar, you'll write a stronger webinar.
And actually going to add one more thing to that as well. What symptom do they have that's really getting to them? So like I've read forums where people talk about how, it feels like they have maple syrup in their veins, or, they just can't get through the day without needing a nap or something like that. So you can approach it through a symptom that's really bothering them, and have that be, if that symptom is connected to being pre-diabetic.
Yeah. Tying this into messaging a little bit, what you just said, like, I feel like I have maple syrup running through my veins, or I can't make it through the day. Is that more compelling than do you have low energy? Yes. Right? Because you can visually, you talk a lot about this, like word pictures, right? So can you talk a little bit about that? And then we'll get to Kyle and Cody to add some stuff to this. So word pictures, forming that visual in their heads.
Yeah, that's really important. That's what brings your copy to life. And people can actually see themselves in that action or having that feeling. So if you can describe things that way, it's really different saying something like, you got to lose 20 pounds, and saying, you're tired of going into your closet and your clothes not fitting. You can't put your jeans on. That type of thing. So that's a much more visual type of action. So one of the things Melanie and I do when we're working with you all on coming up with how to say these things is to say, okay, if I was watching a movie that was describing this, that was going to play out this scene, what would I be looking at? So that's one way you can do it.
Cody, can you give the example that we talked about on the podcast with the steak grilling on the barbecue? Like, it's a really good example of the detail, the vividness there.
Yeah, I like to tell stories, and I think it's very useful in our marketing, and if you do any kind of content, podcasting, writing, things like that, just the stories are much more interesting than facts or bullet points. And so you and I were talking about somebody in the program, I don't know if they're here or not, they had a program that helps guys like grill, like how to lose weight without giving up meat. So, well, that's great, and that's a fine headline, but what if we talk about, like, I love to grill, and I love, we were just thinking like what that's like, and you get out, you get the steak out, and you let it sit on the counter to get to room temperature, then you salt it, and the salt kind of goes away and it dissolves, and you take whatever that process is like for you. For me, you swing open the patio door and I fire the grill up and you can smell the charcoal and you see your neighbor peek over the fence and say, I wonder what's going on over there. What's he about to grill? And then when you season it and you shoo the dog away and then there's some flies and you swat them away and you put the steak on the grill and it sizzles and then you can smell it instantly. Maybe that literally made my mouth water thinking. Like that's the power of a story. You smell the salt, you smell and if you're like vegan, vegetarian, I apologize. I just grossed you out. But for those of you that like the steak, like, you know what I'm talking about. And the whole process, I was talking to Allison and there's like football on and maybe you hear football in the background from the living room inside while the steak is grilling and the kids come out and say, Dad, when's it going to be ready? And the dog is, that's just a much more interesting scenario that we've all been there. And so if you're writing that ad copy saying, you don't want to give that up, do you? And they're like, no, I don't want to give that up. I want more of that. And that's why I've got introducing this program or this training to help people just like you, if you like that whole story, learn how to be fit and healthy and not give up that amazing experience. So I think stories and that really vivid imagination are super useful. I love the idea of like a movie. If you're writing that movie, like what would that be like? What would that scene be like? How would those people feel? Or what would they be afraid of? Or what are they worried about? Or what are they excited about? Yeah,
it's really good. Did you guys feel yourselves kind of sucked into that story? Yeah. Now I want a steak. No, it's really good. This how many of you guys, most of us are, I would say, well, maybe it's just me, but I'm a very logical, analytical person. Like, who else is like that? You're very like factual, matter of fact, and doing something like that is like, whoa, I have to actually go into detail and explain things in terms of like a story. That's very foreign to someone like myself. I've had to force myself to do more of that because I realized that just being like, hey, here's this thing, check it out, doesn't really compel most humans, maybe for robots. But that's like, guys, the thing is, no matter how intelligent you are, no matter how many letters you have behind your name, it all comes back down to story. The more story you can use, and we talked about this in the webinar, like use more story, like facts tell, stories sell. Okay, whatever you can use to back up your claims or use metaphors to, actually, maybe we could talk about metaphors because metaphors are a great way to express or get an idea across that kind of makes sense. Cody, you want to talk to that? Sorry, not Cody, Kyle. My bad, buddies.
Tell you a story.
Metaphors and storytelling. I think this combines what I really like when you can get a good metaphor. And kind of going deeper into what Cody's describing is like, there's a combination of a condition that you're feeling, the syrup running through my veins, which is really good. But it's also like a factor of how well you understand and how well you're honed in on your audience and who you're looking for. So we can imagine the grilling scene that Cody's talking about there. And it's going to be different for maybe a pro athlete who's trying to, stay in the game versus maybe a new mother or a school teacher who's just trying to not be burned out. And so once you start to understand that, you can peek into your audience's world a little bit better. We want to get to know them kind of on like a Seinfeld level where he tells those weird jokes and you're like, how did you think of something like that? But when you start to like see their day and that kind of aspect and in that kind of detail, and I love what Nicole's saying, I think forums are a stunningly good resource to find things like that. But yeah, a metaphor can really drive your point home and create an emotional connection with what you're doing.
So you mentioned forums like Reddit, or there's probably other forums. Another great place to get language that your audience is using, Amazon comments or Amazon reviews. So if you go to book on whatever topic your topic area is, and you look at the top books, whatever reviews are, look at the top the 5-star reviews, look at the 1-star reviews, and look at the reviews that are not like, hey, great book, but the ones that have a lot of like meat in there. That's where the emotion comes out. That's where they're going to use vivid language. And that's where you're going to see some of the pain points as well. Like, hey, this book sucked because, oh, cool, because of this, because, okay, cool. Now I'm going to make that, if it makes sense, part of your offer, right? So there's a lot of cool opportunities to tap in, kind of like you're almost spying on your audiences. Metaphors are, think of it like this, like a metaphor it's kind of like ... And this is, Melanie, you guys probably see this a lot on the webinars. It's like,
Got an awesome example from earlier today.
Go for it.
You said, market like a master so you don't have to sell like a slave.
Sure.
Okay. And everybody in the room went, and every pen was like, write her down. I'm writing that down right now. Okay, it was a lot of sophisticated stuff going on right there. Everybody knows what it's like to live like a slave. There was an alliteration, market like a master, MM. So you don't have to sell like a slave, SS. The sound of it was right. There was a clear benefit to do this so that you can get that outcome. And if there's some resistance, marketing's kind of blecky when you first get started. Not everybody loves marketing. Okay, choice A, don't master it. Be a slave. That's on you. Or choice B, be brave, learn to market. Now have freedom, no more slavery. All of that is built right in. And if you put a message like that as one of your discoveries or secrets on your webinar, they're interested. The underlying structure of that idea is so solid, and it's a thing they've thought of before. Oh, I have these feels about marketing. Maybe I don't want to do it. Then you're like, hey, here's a new way you've never thought of it like that before. Something they've thought about, fresh new light. Suddenly you look like a genius.
Yeah. Do you guys know Food Matters? Food Matters TV? So James and Laurentine are colleagues and friends of ours. And I remember years ago when they were starting their platform, and James was saying, I want it to be like ... the Netflix for health. That's a metaphor. So I don't know if it's still existent, but on their headline was the Netflix for health documentaries, or the health of the Netflix for health. And like, you don't need any explanation. Like, you get it, right? Because Netflix is the anchor to something you already know. And now they're making that association. And this, we're kind of going a little bit off the picture, but, in your webinars, when you're sharing your stuff, make it simple for people. When you're talking about this thing, this concept, think of a metaphor. What is this like? And I would actually encourage you to create a master Google Doc of metaphors. What is having a tough time getting out of bed in the morning like? I don't know. Like, I can't think right off the top of my head, but maybe Cody has an example. I'm not too sure. But just think of these different areas in your business, your messaging, where you can relate that to something else. One of my coaches, one of the titles of his program is the Teflon method, right? And it's basically to avoid stage 5 clingers as clients, right? So he doesn't want clients sticking to him like a stage 5 clinger. So what is that like? Well, it's like having a pan that is Teflon anti-stick. So he called it the Teflon method, right? Things like that. So start thinking in metaphors and creating metaphors around the things you want to talk about and explain. If you're on the plane with someone, hey, what do you do? Well, I kind of do this thing, and it's kind of like this. Like, give people really simple ways to understand what it is you do, or what kind of concept you want to get across. Does that make sense?
Can I add one quick thing to that,
Yeah.
Yuri? So this is really important. If you have to describe something about, like something medical, where people are just, you don't want to go into all of this detail in medical talk that people aren't going to understand. You want to connect it to something where they're going to be able to say, oh, I get it. So that's really where the beauty comes in.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I've got a quick story as well. Shocker on that. I 2 Mother's Days ago ordered my mom flowers from an online flower company, and I got a notification that they had left Peru. They were like fresh flowers, and they arrived in Nashville at FedEx, and they went to Dallas, and they were on a truck, and then they were delivered to her door. And I was just like watching my phone, and I got the text notification that they had been delivered, and then I got a text from Mom. Oh my gosh, you're the best son. I'm like, I know. You're welcome. Happy Mother's Day. And that tracking process, it's kind of like what Facebook pixels are like. And like, that's chapter 8 of the book that I wrote about marketing. Like, I wrote a book about pixels, and people are like, this sucks. Like, that is so, I don't understand. But pixels are helpful, so you can know if those flowers didn't get to my mom. I didn't know, well, are they in Dallas? Are they in Nashville? So how far did people get through your funnel? It's kind of like what
I understand pixels better now. Thank you.
you're welcome.
I'd like to add one more thing to this too. Because we hear Cody coming up with these amazing stories, and we're hearing these good metaphors. So like, how am I going to freaking come up? Like, Cody does this all the time. This is hard. So how do we choose these, and how do we create stories that are going to get results for you? And one of the best places to do it, or to find it out, is through your research, on your enrollment calls, and you start to learn what are the really big objections. Obviously, one of the biggest ones we're all going to encounter is price. But there's other ones. What's keeping people from believing that it's possible to succeed in this way? What's keeping people from seeing the world the way you see it? What are these big objections? Yeah, but I don't want to give up. Yeah, but I'm going to have to stop drinking red wine. Are you kidding me? And once you start to understand those then you say, okay, let's craft a story that speaks right to that. So your audience is giving you the answers of what stories you need to tell. And so if you start to think about what are these big objections, and you can start creating stories that you can tell in your webinar, it's great, because then you can start to address the objections in story before the pitch even happens. Because like, even if we look up in this picture right here with these two ladies standing in front of these people, that's a scary moment. And that's how a lot of us feel when it comes time to get to the pitch section of our webinar. It's like, okay, I'm going to sell you something now. But if you're, by the way you're talking and the way you're telling stories, if you lead up to this beforehand, so you're systematically addressing all the big objections, you're describing your program and the results you're going to get. By the time you get here, it's going to feel more like you're in the comfy chairs instead of just being kind of nervous and like, okay, do you want to buy this thing?
Yeah, absolutely. How many of you guys watch Shark Tank? Did you ever notice that a lot of the pitches start off with, isn't it frustrating when they start off with a problem or an objection, right? So they're entering the conversation in the prospect's minds. And obviously that's rehearsed several times over. But the thing is, as Kyle talked about, is identify these objections, identify the skepticism. And if you can address those before they can, you've neutralized them. And it can even start in your ad. Because if you know that that person's going to say, oh, this is just like another, like I have ads that are like, yep, here's another one of those guys pitching his business, ... I'll start an ad like that because I'm entering the conversation that person's probably thinking. And now it totally disarms them. And they're like, okay, now let me hear what this guy has to say. So don't be afraid to raise those objections because they actually make your pitch and your offers more believable and trustworthy. So cool. Bella, anything you want to add to this conversation so far that we haven't touched on?
Just to kind of piggyback on what Kyle was saying about the enrollment calls and getting that information from the clients, it's like the importance of just getting it out there, right? Like we can offer advice and leaning in for support is like highly encouraged because we have a good idea of what definitely won't work and what could work, but there's so many variables to test that it takes a lot of effort to figure out that exact thing and that exact place where you're going to find that person and what their desires and experience is, and that this whole thing is part of the research and then being open, being that mindset about it too, to keep refining.
Yeah.
That your pitch is going to evolve and it's never going to be perfect because it's always perfecting itself over time. And that when you see it as a process instead of a thing, that you can just move forward with a lot more confidence and speed and lightheartedness. And that'll build into the mindset and the energy behind.
Yeah, it's a really good point because, we believe that the best coaching is the data. The data is going to tell you, like we can give you all sorts of ideas, but until you conclusively have data that shows, all right, well, this audience and this message is working, or you're paying $50 for a lead, you should probably shut that ad off, right? Then with that, we can now take that and start to work, some of our magic to make it more, more compelling. Like, Rosie, we talked about, your landing page with the headline, and right there in the Facebook thread, we cleaned it up and made it more powerful. But we tell this to our clients all the time, you don't need our permission to deploy it. Right? You can get our feedback, but don't wait until we give you the go-ahead on every ad, every headline, everything, because we might tell you something that maybe your audience actually responds to well, but if it's something glaringly bad, we'll let you know, right? In a loving way. So, has this been helpful for you guys? Yeah? Thanks so much, guys. It's good. Today, I'm going to give you a little recap of our recent Healthpreneur Live event. Just in case you don't know, Healthpreneur Live is our annual event. We do it every single year, except for the past 3 years because of COVID and lockdowns. And I want to share some lessons that I think can be very valuable to you and your business as well from this experience.